Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Andrew Heyman, and I'm here with the CDBG team that we traditionally have here for third Thursdays. And we are lucky to be joined by three members of the Kansas Water Office who are going to present about HB 2302 grant programs that have recently become available through the Kansas Water Office. I'm with Matt, Connie, and Victoria, who have joined us, and they brought these slides to present to us today. This will go, essentially, they'll present the slides, maybe 15, 20 minutes, I don't know, and then open it up for questions after that. So please let us know if you have any technical difficulties on your side in the chat, or if you have questions, put them in the chat and we could address them. Okay, so with that, I will pass it over to Matt to present.
And actually, I'm going to pass it over to Connie Owen here. I'll be running the slides, but Connie will be the one presenting today. And Connie Owen is the director of the Kansas Water Office, so she'll be working through the presentation here today.
Okay, great. Hi, everybody. As Matt said, I'm Connie Owen, the director of the Kansas Water Office. And we're going to talk to you about a couple of brand new grant programs that are available through our office. Initially, I'm going to kind of fly through some information about who we are, but I know that's not really, we don't want to make a deep dive into that today because that's not why you all are tuning in. Before I say any more, though, I would like to give a great shout out to the Department of Commerce because these two new grant programs were assigned to our office by new legislation last spring. And my office had never before administered grant programs. So we were absolutely rookies. And we contacted the Department of Commerce and said, you guys do this kind of thing all the time. Can we please come and learn the wisdom of your ways? And they had us over and shared great information and gave us a tremendous amount of good advice that helped us get started. So before I go forward with more information, I wanted to be sure and thank them for that. They really set us off on a good path. So the Water Office, really, we are the planning and policy and coordinating water office for the state. We don't regulate, we don't permit, but we work with the water quality and water quantity agencies that do those particular functions. One of our flagship functions is to create the state water plan, which was updated a year ago. And then it's also our responsibility to implement the water plan, which indicates all kinds of needs and recommendations for what to do about those needs. So let's just kind of click through a few more water office slides. This sort of gives you an at a glance idea of the structure of our office. And I'll mention in a couple other slides what the Kansas Water Authority is. Some of you may have heard of them in our public water supply program. So next slide. This is a depiction of where the Kansas Water Authority members live. This is an advisory group, an advisory board that's created by statute. And most of the people that are on this board are appointed by the governor. 2 people are appointed by legislative leadership, and they provide advice. Their job is to provide recommendations and advice to the legislature and the governor and to the Water Office on water policy, legislation, and how money is spent. So next slide. Are you stuck?
It moved on this end, so I'm not sure.
This is where we should have one of those little slides. It's like the different color bands that said experiencing technical difficulties. This is a list of the ex officio, the non-voting members of the Water Authority, which are basically the leadership of all the state agencies and research entities in the state that have involvement in anything related to water. So they help provide expertise to the Water Authority with their particular duties and issues. Next slide. Our agency also works from a ground up sort of setup with, especially with our water planning. This map shows the 14 different planning regions we have around the state. Each one of these regions has its own regional advisory committee, which is made up of local experts who meet regularly, and those meetings are facilitated by members of my staff to provide information and input on local issues and local needs, as well as recommendations as to what to do about those and recommendations for funding or how to address those various needs in the various regions. Next. A list of some of the water planning support duties that we do. I'll just let you kind of take a glance at those. Next slide, please. And we also have a key role in drought monitoring and response. Our office is the lead of the governor's drought response team, and we are part of a team that monitors drought information from national information, national science organizations, as well as state level. And when it looks like things are changing such that there needs to be a modification of drought declarations at the county level, then the drought response team is convened. My office convenes that team and they get together and discuss what's going on at each county level and advise the governor about making particular declarations, whether it's a drought emergent, watch warning emergency level, and that makes different levels of assistance available at the county level. So next slide. We also have the public water supply program. This is a map of various reservoirs in the state. We contract with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers for storage space in the federal reservoirs in the state. And so those contracts the state has through our office, we then turn around and sell water to various municipalities and some specific districts to provide their public water and drinking water supplies. So this is an operation that actually provides about 2/3 of the population of the state with their drinking water. As you can tell, it's more of an Eastern Kansas situation, whereas Western Kansas relies more on groundwater as opposed to the reservoirs. Next slide. Okay, here we are. Show me the money. The legislature this last spring passed a law, which the long name for it is Senate Substitute for House Bill 2302. For short, we've been referring to it as HB 2302. One thing that it did was it designated an additional $35 million per year for the next 5 years to go into the State Water Plan Fund. Of that 35, it peeled off $5 million for this technical assistance fund and $12 million for the water projects grant fund, and that's per year, which left the $18 million to actually go into the State Water Plan Fund to help fund various projects and programs and research that will help address the various water needs throughout the state. What we're going to talk about are the technical assistance and the water projects grant funds. Next slide. Okay, of the two, let's start with the technical assistance fund. The eligible applicants are municipalities and special districts related to water. That's what the statute said. So that's pretty broadly worded. The eligible projects that this fund can help pay for, it's more to help you get started, to kind of get in the process, get in the door, so to speak, because it is designed to help pay for planning, engineering, managing, and other technical assistance necessary for the development of plans for water infrastructure projects. It's also designed to help pay for processing grant and loan applications for water infrastructure projects. So for example, small communities that don't even know where to start, they can't afford a consultant, they can't afford a grant writer. That's what this money is supposed to go to provide. Next slide. The limits on this award, as I said, this is $5 million total per year. No single grant can exceed 1 million. Now, this is really one of the best things about it. There is no matching fund requirement. This is not a cost share. This is you ask for the money, and if you get it, you get it. You don't have to bring any money to the table. So the evaluation criteria for this, the municipalities with fewer than 2,000 residents will be prioritized for full grants. Because again, I think the intent was to help smaller communities that don't have the resources to get in the game, so to speak. The timeline for these grant applications, projects with earlier start dates will be prioritized. And projects that incorporate a conservation and or climate change resiliency plan will be prioritized. And there are other criteria for municipalities that can include public health and socioeconomic factors. So when you see these various things that will trigger being prioritized, if you don't have that, if you can't include that or that doesn't apply to you, that doesn't mean you're not eligible. That just means they're given priority, but it doesn't mean you have to have those particular components to apply. Next slide. The other grant fund, as the name indicates, is more project-based. It's the Water Projects Grant Fund. Again, the same applicants are eligible, municipalities and special districts related to water. These eligible projects are construction, repair, maintenance, or replacement of water-related infrastructure. This can be used for matching money to leverage other grants or loans for water-related infrastructure projects. This can also be used to help pay down outstanding loan balances that one of those entities would have, either from the Public Water Supply Loan Fund or the Kansas Pollution Control Revolving Fund. Those are two loan funds out of the Kansas Department of Health and Environment. Next slide. This Water Projects Grant Fund, the total for that each year that we're given is $12 million. No single grant can exceed $8 million. Again, no cost share, no matching fund requirement. You don't need to bring money to the table to apply for these grants. And the evaluation criteria are similar to the technical assistance grants. Earlier start dates are prioritized. Conservation and climate change resiliency plan incorporation, those will be prioritized. The community factors, public health, socioeconomic factors, those will help with prioritization. And because these involve projects, these also are going to be, the applicant will have to provide assurance that other pertinent permits and authorizations either have been applied for or have been acquired. And before the end of the process, they will have to be shown to have actually been acquired. So as you know, with construction projects, there are any number of other permits that are required. So those are going to have to be acquired before the money would actually be awarded, so that we know that we're not running afoul of any other authorizations that need to be accomplished out there. Next slide. So evaluation criteria if you want to pay off your outstanding loans. So take a look at this slide. This information's on our website. It's in the slide presentation, which I guess, can be shared as well. Depending on how much has been paid down and the size of the community will determine the amount of grant that can be applied toward paying down these outstanding loans. Next slide. So on our website, the application process is right there. The applications, there's one for each kind of grant. You can apply for one or both. The applications require a statement of work, a budget, a timeline for your project, and affidavit. So what does affidavit mean? That is the statement that says you have obtained or applied for all necessary permits for federal, state, or local. And that in the case of projects, that you have or are in the process of acquiring legal access to the property. Because we want to be respectful of the idea that if a project's going to take place, that there has to be legal access to the property involved. Next slide. Applications submitted by December 29 of this year, I know that's not far away, they're considered for this round of funding, but don't give up if you don't get your application in by then, because after that date, they'll be evaluated pending available funds. So you're not out of the game if you don't get it in by December 29. It's just, again, you get the best consideration if you do get it in by then. And we plan to begin award notifications in the first quarter of 2024. Next slide. This is a screenshot of a page from the Kansas Water Office website. If you look under news and events at the bottom, you'll see HB 2302 grant programs, and that will open this page and it will include links to the applications. They're very, very simple. It also includes the guidelines, which will spell out everything I've just explained to you and then some. It also includes what has been developed by Victoria, a frequently asked questions page, because as you can imagine, she's getting deluged with questions. So many of them were the same kind of questions again and again and again. So the frequently asked questions page may answer things that are on your mind. And there's an example of that affidavit, and that is the sworn statement. It's a statement that's signed and notarized that again talks about an assurance that all permits that are necessary and any and all legal access that's required, that those things have been acquired or in the process of being acquired. So we have an example of what that could look like. So we've tried to make this as user-friendly and as easy a process as possible. So we would, after you've read these guidelines and you think you might qualify, we encourage you to apply, because there's no application fee, there's no cost share required, and the legislature intended for this money to get spent to address needs. So that's what we're committed to doing. We don't want the money to sit there unused. So that's pretty much the presentation. I know I kind of whipped through things in a hurry, and I guess now we're open to stand for questions if you have any questions.
Don't see any questions in the chat yet. Does anyone out there have any questions?
Yeah, hi, my name is Mike. I'm with the city of Goddard. I jumped on a little bit late on some of this. The water project fund, is that just going to cover hard costs? I mean, do you have to mix and match these funds if you have, for example, the engineering costs that would be under the technical fund? I mean, if we got, for example, if we didn't apply for the technical fund and we got the construction, the project fund, could we expense some of our soft costs to that project fund, or does it all have to be separate?
I think if what I understand your question to be is, under the water projects fund, could that include engineering costs and planning costs?
Correct.
Yes, because I think that's inherent in the process with any kind of project. So I think that could be as long as that's part of the project, right? Not the initial planning. The initial planning would be more appropriate for the technical assistance grant. But yes, the projects is not just for materials and contractors that, are constructing things out in the real world. It can be for engineering and planning for the project.
And that would include legal fees, for example. What about acquisition?
Yeah, I mean, I think that legal fees for part of the project to acquire the access that you need, I think ask for that. I haven't been asked that particular question before, but sort of our stock response to everything is ask for it. And in the evaluation process, we'll kind of see how it shakes out. But I think the intent is for the water projects grant is for the construction, maintenance, upgrade. So the engineering costs may be more in line than legal fees, but you can certainly identify those and make those part of your request and kind of see how that shakes out.
What about land acquisition costs themselves? For example, if we have to buy land for easement access control, would that be an eligible cost as well?
That I'm not entirely sure about. As again, these are brand new programs, and so we're kind of learning in a way as we go. That may be a little more tangential. And it might come down to the prioritization. For example, if we have requests for actual hard cost projects, they may get prioritized over something like that. So again, you could make that part of your request, but I'm really not confident right now that I would say that would definitely be included.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we have some hands raised and some questions in the chat. Let's go to Tamara Hillman first. You had your hand up first.
Hi, I was curious with the affidavit for permits and legal access, is that only required for the water projects grant application, or would you need something like that for technical assistance?
I envision that for the water projects grant. Is that what you're thinking, Victoria? I'm sure Victoria's gotten that question too.
Yeah, it is primarily for water projects. We do have it as potentially included in the technical assistance if you need access to a site to start designing your technical assistance. So it is listed under both, but it's primarily for water projects.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Deb?
Hi, everyone. Question related to a partial answer that you gave before about applications that are received after December 29th. Does that mean that there won't be an annual round and you will start allocating additional years dollars right away with those applications that come in more as an open round, or will there be a hard deadline with each year's new allocation? And then secondary to that, but not really related, a project that has already started construction, would they be eligible to still apply for gap financing to maybe eliminate part of their loan if they're, under construction, but not yet completed and obviously wouldn't have paid on their loan for that 5-year period?
Okay, in answer to the first question, and I'm already trying to scroll back in my brain as to exactly what that one was. Can you remind me the first part of your question?
You had said that you would take applications after December 29th,
Right, okay.
and then it would be allocated. So is that from just any excess of this year's allocation, or are you starting to stack applications already for the subsequent years, or will there be another deadline at the end of the next 3 to 4 years as well for each annual allocation?
We need to kind of see how this actually plays out. The fiscal year that we are working with right now is July to July. So the money that we currently have available is on that timeline. But we do want to get the money out the door. So that's why we have the sooner deadline, is to get those applications in so that we can start awarding grants. I think we envision doing this kind of as on something of a rolling basis, but I'm not sure when we would then be awarding. I would imagine that in the first quarter of 2024, we're going to be awarding based on what came in before December 29. And then after that, I think we'll see what we have. And there may not be any money left in this cycle. And if there is, then it would behoove us to get the money spent to address a need before the next July, because the way the legislature works, they want to see the money spent. So I think we're going to have to see, based on available funds, what there might be. So our guidelines are drawn up basically for the first year to kind of see how things work. I would imagine that we'll try to stick with this same time frame, but we're learning as we go. So we may not keep that hard and fast.
But part of this year one evaluation too is, I mean, there's kind of an unknown on our part too regarding the overall interest in dollars that we would be looking to obligate from this side of too. So not knowing what sort of overall applicant pool we would receive and the overall request for that, having that opportunity for if we are in a situation to where applications don't match available funding, that any applications submitted after that December 29th stated cutoff date would be eligible if funding still were available from that FY24 allocation.
And I will short circuit my question just a little bit to kind of come at it from a different angle. You know, the fear that communities have is that there's the potential, if the application isn't in by the 29th, potentially they wouldn't be eligible for any additional funding. So I think some assurance that there will be additional rounds and that it won't all get allocated on this upfront deadline is more what people are asking. And I didn't ask that very well.
I think, yes, I don't think that if they apply after the deadline, then the money may run out, but we wouldn't say you're done. I think if you've applied, you're going to stay in the pipeline. And then I would imagine, and again, I'm kind of speculating here because we haven't been through a year or two, but the money that would then be available for year two, I would think an existing application would then be in line to be considered for the next round of funding. That we're never gonna, I don't envision that we would say, you didn't make the deadline, you're done. We're dismissing your application. As long as we have reason to believe that there will be more money coming in, you would still be under consideration. Does that help?
Yes, I think so. Yeah, it's the idea of whether or not that set aside for each year is going to be a set aside for each year that will open up for consideration again versus because you get inundated, will you potentially allocate, 48 million out of what you get by December 29th versus having the other years sort of standing alone. And I think you answered that, you're not going to allocate above at least the annual amount.
No, we cannot. No, we're not going to commit. We're not going to award money beyond the total that we're allowed to every year.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, you want to read the next one?
Yes, so the next question is this grant only available for drinking water or is wastewater included?
Wastewater is included.
Okay.
Does this grant require the usual moderate to low income population with a similar to CDBG or just a criteria that is evaluated?
Or income limits or anything like that with it?
There aren't income limits, but as you might remember, there was sort of a catch-all phrase about the community factors regarding public health and socioeconomic. So the socioeconomic status of a community will be one of the factors that can be taken into consideration, but there aren't income requirements and limits.
Yeah, and for additional clarity, their program is separate from CDBG, and so they're not subject to low and moderate income requirements above 51% and all that stuff.
Right.
Next.
All right, the next question, I believe you answered from Deb Oldie, but I'll ask it again just in case. Do funds carry over to the next year if yearly allocation is not awarded in each year?
Yes.
Next,
Or I'm sorry, the funds, did you say the funds or the applications would roll over?
do funds carry over?
So essentially the unobligated funds, if they aren't obligated or awarded from the FY 24, would those carry forward into 25, those unobligated or unawarded funds, which they do?
Yeah, that's,
Yes.
okay.
Will you make a recording of this presentation available, please?
Yes.
We can do that. Can the project fund be used to pay down a USDA RD funded project or just state revolving loan funds funded projects for a city under 2,000 population?
Just those two identified kinds of loans, because that's what it says in the law. It specifies those two KDHE programs.
Would the water project grant cover water lines from water meter to houses or businesses?
It could. I'm not gonna say no, but we have to be careful about sounding like we're pre-authorizing any request, but that, I would say that would fall within the purpose for the grant.
We are replacing all manual water meters with radio read. We have received the meters, but none are installed. We will need to purchase new software and install these meters. Would any of these costs be eligible?
Yeah, it fit in the operation and maintenance realm, right? So yeah, that would.
I think that would be related enough. Yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead and apply.
Can the applicant be a rural water district or county, any type of public type entity?
It needs to be a municipality or a special district related to water. So that could be a rural water district, that could be a watershed district, that could be a groundwater management district. But not a county. I don't think county falls within those, but it needs to be a district related to water.
If a project is not selected from first year funds, will that app carry over for year 2? Or do they have to apply in year 2, 3, or 4, et cetera? Should we answer that?
Correct.
Is that in our frequently asked questions?
It's not, I mean, actually, this is something Victoria and I were just talking about the other day too. And I think part of this too, and this being year 1, this is kind of our overall evaluation, start to finish of the program too. So questions that we'll be taking a look at as far as trying to get to that question would be, do we need to make any modifications to our application process? And if so, how that relates to applications that we have in hand that were not selected for funding, and kind of what our process is as far as keeping those in the hopper versus any additional information or new applications based off of any modifications we would make for a year or 2. So that's something that we're still trying to kind of get a handle on as to what that status is for a year or 2 and future signups for unfunded projects. So I guess I would say we're considering that right now, but stay tuned for more information as we kind of get a feel of how this overall year 1 process plays out. If there's no substantial changes that we'd be looking to make in the application and information requested is the same, there could be scenarios where it's just a matter of keeping that same application in the hopper. But until we have a chance to make the determination as to any sort of modifications or additional information that we might need just for a year or 2 or beyond obligations, that's I guess to be determined at this point.
Right. And we would let people know.
Right.
That's what I was gonna say. We will inform people and not just leave them wondering.
Right.
For sure. So.
Is a project that is in process, meaning that they've started construction, is that project eligible for funding?
If it is not complete, yes, but we're not retroactively paying for things that are done. Right.
Is stormwater included? This is a multi-part question. If we do not yet have designs for our project, should we apply for TA to do just design, or should we apply for the construction and design under the construction grant?
I would say you could apply for both, but it might be a little difficult to fill out the application for the water projects grant if you can't describe your project and have a budget and a timeline. So.
If a very small town wants to purchase a mixer for their water tower to avoid freezing in the winter, can that be done as a construction request without a PER or design because it is not necessarily needed for this equipment purchase and installation?
Sorry, a what for the water tower?
PER.
Preliminary engineering report.
Okay,
And
what,
I can answer it because
You
yeah,
can go
yeah, someone else has already, it may be the same person that's asking that. Yeah, so basically what they're asking is like the project is relatively simple and doesn't require like a whole engineering report.
oh, I see.
Can they apply for water projects without like a whole engineering
That
report?
don't need one, sure.
Yeah, yes.
Right, right.
And so, yeah, the answer is yes.
Okay.
And that would fit within the operation realm of those
Right.
funds as well, right?
How critical is the project description information and scope of work, budget, timeline, et cetera, for a loan forgiveness request?
Not necessary. And those aren't required fields in the application. So if you check that you are paying off an outstanding loan, there's just 2 questions. You don't need the scope of work, budget, timeline, if you're just paying off a loan.
And could you maybe speak to, the information that would be provided for the loan forgiveness, what that, I guess, key information is as well?
Yeah, we just require 2 document uploads, your payoff amount. So a lot of people have just been asking KDHE for a payoff document. And then also, I think it's a description of the original project. And it's both are just document uploads that we require if you're paying off a loan.
We would request that the application portal allow for applications to be saved and accessed by multiple people to ease the application process.
Yeah, that's great feedback that we have heard. It's not a capability that we have this year for year 1, but we will have it in year 2 for sure. We're working on getting different software. So I do apologize. It's not an option for this time, but it definitely will be in the future.
And last question for the chat. Does a municipality need to show a financial hardship to qualify for the revolving loan payoff? And if so, what would financial hardship be considered?
For the loan payoff, I don't think, do they? I mean, I don't think they need to show that. I think they need to show what the project is and how much they have left to pay off and the size of the community.
Right, yeah, we don't require any kind of like financial statement or financial need proof if you want to pay off a loan or for the water projects grant in general, actually. So no, you don't need any kind of financial statement to pay off a loan.
Next question. Can you apply for a TA grant and construction grant in the same year for the same project?
Yes.
That is it for the chat questions at this time.
All right, just checking to make sure we got all the questions. Okay, we will share this recording with people. We'll try to send it out in an email. And then put it on the CDBG website as well. We'll probably put this as our 3rd Thursday for the month. Last chance to ask a question to the Kansas Water Office while we have them here. Anybody? That was actually that was a good amount of questions.
Very good. Yeah, absolutely. And I guess maybe while people are thinking on any sort of final thoughts, I would just put a final plug out. And one of the slides we had on showed on our website where this information is posted. But if you go to kwo.ks.gov in that top toolbar that shows up on the screen here under news and events, that drop down menu is the HB 2302 grant program. So as far as any of the information that was discussed during today's webinar, that's where we have all this information hosted. So kwo.ks.gov. All the information's there. If you do have questions, there's contact information where you can reach out to us afterwards as well. So feel free to reach out to any of us from the Water Office if you have any questions that come to mind following today's webinar as well.
All right.
So I guess I would ask a quick question if I could.
Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, so Medicine Lodge, fewer than 2,000 people. If we have a loan that is in existence because of a water program that is eligible to be paid off through these funds? I missed the very first part of the discussion, so I apologize. So the loan, it sounds like these funds are eligible to be repaying water loan funds, is that correct?
The statute allows for two specific Kansas Department of Health and Environment loan funds for those balances to be paid toward or paid down. There it is, the Public Water Supply Loan Fund or the Kansas Pollution Control Revolving Fund. And I think the next slide after that had the criteria for that.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Okay,
That'll
I think
answer it. Appreciate it.
There we go. So that, maybe this slide will help answer your question.
Actually, it was the one previous, but
Oh,
yeah,
sorry,
this is-
okay.
This is a slide where I came in. Thank you.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
okay, I think we have two more questions in the chat.
Actually, more than that.
More than that.
So let's go from the top. Will geographic distribution of projects be a part of this program?
The statute doesn't speak to that. So I would say that's, you know, that's not something that statutory guidance indicates to us that we need to employ.
Next question, where do we get the number of full-time residents?
Haven't gotten that question yet. Like, any thoughts on where you would find your population?
Just data.
Right, census data, I mean, is what comes to mind, or I don't know, it seems like, does the WSU Environmental Finance Center, do they have any sort of population estimate information that maybe could be utilized as well? But yeah, I mean, just off the cuff, that most recent US Census data, I think would work at least for the 2020 census values and any future estimates that have been compiled since then.
The next question, will you be sending out the Q&A dialogue with the recording you provide to us? Yes, this is still being recorded, Gary, so yes, we will be sending that out. Could there be an upload of an affidavit from a city to be able to have a hired consultant sign on their behalf to avoid the city manager or mayor to sign?
The way we've envisioned this is that the applicant sign the affidavit, because they're the ones responsible for the application. The hired consultant could help provide, you know, documentation or help the city to know to sign that, but we need the applicant to make that assurance.
I think I conflated 2 points in that question. So with many of our smaller cities, it's sometimes a challenge for them to sign electronically on a form like that. So would there be any way that they could prepare an affidavit authorizing us as a consultant to sign and submit the application stating, you know, I have reviewed this and I'm giving you the authority to sign it. So not related to the access from an easement perspective or from a permit perspective. This would be a separate, to try to get around having to necessarily drive to those locations to have them sign, since the application doesn't save.
All confused.
Like you're saying, could a city sign an affidavit allowing a consultant to submit the application for them? Okay.
Signatory authority from
Right.
the eligible applicant providing that submit access to a consultant, if that's stated within an affidavit. Is that acceptable for applications?
I haven't-
Purposes and affidavit purposes.
Have we had that question?
I haven't gotten
before?
that one. That's a new one.
A lot of grant administrators prepare applications on behalf of the communities for our program, so I'm assuming that's partially where that question.
Okay.
comes from.
Yeah.
But all of the like legal authority for doing the grants or being responsible for the grant is still on the applicant, not the grant administrator. So I think that's kind of what she's,
Right.
well, you know, can she prepare the documents? They sign everything they're supposed to, but she's just the one that sends them to you on their behalf. Is that what you're kind of asking about?
Yes, and just, you know, kind of anticipating, again, like in really small towns. So if I'm uploading their information into the grant portal, if they don't have any way to access that application other than me being in the same room with them, then, you know, I'm like driving to them to have them review it and sign it that way. It's just a logistics thing that would just be helpful if there was some way to have a workaround that we didn't have to be, and again, in some cases, we might be able to do it with like, you know, remote desktop access or whatever to a computer, but just wondering if there would be any way to simplify that a bit, since there isn't way for multiple people to access the application and there's not a way to save it. It's, yeah, just looking for suggestions on how to logistically manage that a little bit easier if you have multiple applications going in.
And this could be more of a year one issue than year two.
Sure.
Right.
You have Salesforce full
Right.
of an operational, yeah.
So I mean, for a 1 year,
Yeah,
year one triage.
Yeah.
I
right.
don't see a problem with it, but
I think we could allow for that this first year. After that, we should have the capability for more than one entity to access the application. So,
Yeah,
but-
it's this year. Like you said, if you come out with a
Right.
different approach, then it's like, it becomes a non-issue.
Right.
Right. But it would need, and again, we do not have a history of having grant programs. So obviously some of these questions we're learning at the same time. But this would need to be a situation where it was clear that the responsibility for these statements being true is ultimately on the applicant. Because we wouldn't want to run into a problem in the future where they say, well, that's not my problem. My consultant did that. You see what I'm saying? So it sounds like something that's not out of the ordinary for you guys to deal with. So.
A couple more.
Yes, we do have a couple of people are agreeing that census would be a great location. Next question, can a community apply for loan forgiveness and apply for a new construction project during the same year?
Yes.
And then if we have a project that is X amount of dollars, can we apply for a portion of the budget amount instead of the full amount?
Yes.
Finally, last question in chat for now. We have a PW supply loan for a water treatment plant, which is almost finished with construction. So we have almost finished paying for construction. We have not paid on the loan for 5 years. In that case, would we be ineligible for loan forgiveness?
correct you, sorry, Bonnie, I'll just like that you do have to have made 5 years of payments on the loan in order to be eligible for loan forgiveness.
And does it apply to outstanding loans and bonds or just loans?
Just those two specified loan programs.
Those are the only questions. Chat.
I'm with the city of Williamsburg. Could I ask a question?
Yes.
And I had the question on the new meters. So I'm kind of trying to figure out what could apply and what couldn't apply. We just received the meters, have not paid for them yet. And we will have installation charges and new software, like I said, and we'll have mobile data collector and all of that. So when I put the application in, do I put it for the entire amount of the project, or would I have to deduct off the meters since we've already received them, but not paid for them?
I'm gonna throw this out there, but Victoria, correct me if you have heard a question like this before. and your answer would be different. I would say apply for what you would like to receive money for and specify what it is, and we'll evaluate that as part of the evaluation process.
Okay,
But I think breaking that out, then, you know, that we would prefer to have people ask. And then if the evaluation process, you know, if it doesn't get past that, but some of your request does, then all the better. But we'd rather have people ask than not ask.
okay, so what if I had to make payment before we're notified whether it's been approved or not? Let's say you did approve it, but we'd already paid for the meters. What would that cause? Is that a problem?
Well, if we were to approve your request and you'd already paid for them, then you would get the money and it would be in the nature of a reimbursement.
Okay,
But that's assuming that we would approve the award. If
Of
you'd
course.
already covered the cost, then you end up with the award money to help make up for that.
I understand.
Okay.
Thank you.
I have a quick question. This is Angela Shea from City of Ogden. It sounds like if you have a project that maybe can be broken up into phases, you guys would consider during the evaluation process that you might fund a portion of it, but not the whole thing. Is that what I'm hearing? You guys could decide what portion you would fund.
Well, the grant awards are designated as up to a certain amount, like for projects up to 8 million per. I mean, that's the most we can award any one application. So there may be a situation where we have so many applicants that we have way more requests than we have the funding. So looking at the other criteria, and if there's, you know, a conservation plan and all these other criteria, if it happens to develop that some of one grant can be approved and some of another can be approved, as opposed to one gets everything and the other gets nothing, either one of those options might play out. So again, at this point, I would say ask for as much as you want. Ask for, don't skimp on the ask. But because getting something rather than nothing, of course, is a better outcome. You don't have to.
Sorry. I
Sorry.
guess I was just making sure that if we put in an application that had maybe 3 parts to it, that it wouldn't be disregarded completely if they couldn't fund the whole project, is what I was
No.
asking. Okay.
No, that would not, that's not what I envision, no.
And could you maybe speak to, so in situations like that too, if there were kind of multiple phases and a phase 1 were to receive an award this year, the eligibility and access to funds for phase 2 and beyond from future years, would they be able to apply for future years if it were to be only 1 year
Yes.
worth of funding or one phase of funding that was awarded within this
Yes.
current sign up?
Yes.
Right.
If you get part of the money you request, you can always ask again. That doesn't mean you get it, but you can always ask for the next steps.
Right.
Okay, got a couple more.
Yes, so I'll just answer this real quick. We do have a couple of repeat questions. So yes, wastewater projects are eligible.
Yes.
Funding will be announced in the first quarter of 2024, is that correct? All right, so how far back will you go in reimbursing someone costs incurred and already paid for on a project?
Well, if a project is complete, it's not eligible. So that's about as best as I can answer that question. So that would imply that when you are applying, you have not completed your project and paid for it. So. But we don't have a set date in terms of, you know, if you've paid for something by X amount of date or however many weeks ago. spell out what your situation is and see if you can get an award from it. I mean, I really want to encourage people to apply because the application process is super easy as these things go. And it's free. So ask.
And on our end too, we would be able to make the determination. I mean, there's a timestamp associated with each of the submittals that take place. So as far as kind of this application and potential reimbursement for cost, if there were to be proposals that are submitted, it's timestamped and proof of payment is made during kind of that evaluation window. If it were to be the award, if there's proof of payment, i.e. setting up the reimbursement scenario, that payment were to be made after submission of the application, that would be kind of setting up the reimbursement scenario on kind of the costs and considerations that we're talking about. So that would be something we would be able to take a look at internally. And when it comes to questions of, is this something that could be reimbursed if it goes to award? Those would be some of the factors that we would be looking at internally to help make those determinations. And just based off the timestamps, that would be kind of our quick glance review for that.
Yeah, anything else in there?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. Is this a reimbursement grant or is this cash upfront?
I think you just answered that.
All right, and that is it for the questions.
Okay, looks like that's it for the questions. Again, I want to thank Connie, Matt, and Victoria from joining from the Kansas Water Office. Our team at CDBG will look in the future to continue collaborating with KWO and KDHE and any other partners in the state who are offering support for water infrastructure projects. So please, we'll send the slides out. We'll send the recording out. Everyone out there, you have the contact information for KWO. You have our contact information. Do not be afraid to reach out with additional questions. All right. Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you much.